So I see that we are live and I welcome you all. And when I hold communication seminars, the first question that I often asked to the participant is, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about communication? And I hear things like understanding, speaking, talking, people, audience, connection, information, and all that kind of stuff. And I think I don't have specific statistics, but I estimate that in about 10% of the times, I hear the word listening. And I like to say that communication is what connects us, it's what binds us, it's the glue between us human beings. And the quality of the listening determines whether the glue really holds or not, I think. So, welcome to this live, this time on the power of listening. And in case you don't know me, I'm Carolyn, and I love helping impact driven leaders to find meaning, clarity, and joy at work so that they have the time and the energy to live their life to the fullest. I do so in English, German, French, and Swedish. And today, for the first time, I have a guest. Her calling in life is to spread the power of that we find in listening to others and in listening to oneself. She wrote the book The Art of Listening, or in Swedish, Konsten att lyssna. The English version will be available soon. And she also runs a podcast under the same name. She's a highly sought after keynote speaker, author, podcast host, facilitator, and coach. Please welcome from Stockholm my friend Annika Telléus. Welcome, Annika.
Thank you. What an introduction.
I'm glad that we are having this conversation about this wonderful topic of listening. But maybe before we start, I was wondering, I said, how did you get the calling to spread what the power of listening can do to us, human being?
Yeah, for many years I worked for H&M. I was the manager of the consumer insight, and I traveled the world to listen to consumers and co-workers across the globe. And the better I listened, the better results, and the closer in communication and better relationships. And I also held a lot of internal leadership educations. And when I had worked for like 16 years at H&M, I felt like, okay, it's time to do something new. And what is that? I want to work with people. I want to work with development, self-development, group development. And a bit I was pitying not having the background in HR or as a psychologist or like that. So first I thought that to leave H&M, what will I do next? Do I want to study for many years to become a psychologist? And then I was a bit eager to take the next step. And then I went back, did a bit of a reflection, and actually I wrote notes about when I was at my best, and I put these notes in on the floor and watched them, and it's a bit like studying, connecting the dots, and then I saw that it was all about listening. And then that was my stepping stone into the future. So I read a lot about listening. I summarize what I have captured during the years. And yeah, then I started to do seminars on listening and trainings, and tried my experience and knowledge and shared that.
What an amazing process to get there, you know.
Yeah,
So I'm very happy to have you as a guest today.
I'm very happy to be your guest.
And yeah, you know, but I guess everybody listening also, like, we live in a world that is very fast paced. Many have deadlines and pressure from all sides. We have all these attention catching devices, whether it's the phone, whether it's the TV. Nowadays, I find, you know, you sometimes you go to a restaurant, there's a TV, like, people don't talk with each other. They don't really listen if there's ever a conversation. So what I would like to do today is to explore how we can all become better listeners. We'll rather specifically today in a work context. And maybe in looking at two different perspectives, one, the perspective of a leader or a manager, someone who has busy, very busy schedule, pressure from all sides, but who also wants to have a life and enjoy. If you listen to this, you don't have to be a leader, but we'll maybe look a little bit more from that perspective. And also listening in international settings, because for the listeners right now, it's the first time that Annika and I we speak English together. Usually we speak Swedish, so we both speak a language that is not our native language today. And I think that, I guess many of the listeners are in similar situations at times, and I would like to explore there to how can we become better listener or get more understanding in these kind of situations. So, Annika, I've listened to many of your podcasts, and you always start by reading a podcast prayer as a kind of a ritual. And I would very much appreciate if you can share your podcast prayer with us today.
I would love to. It's a sort of a prayer for myself. It's not religious in any way, and it's an invitation for you. Most times when we meet, we decide when and where, but we seldom speak about the tone and the tempo in which we meet. So this is an invitation to you and to me. This is my podcast prayer. I invite the wisest part of me to this session. Let me be open, authentic, and present. May the conversation be warm, exploratory, and full of trust. Let us bring out the best in each other and welcome what unfolds. May this session become a beautiful memory that we create together, here and now.
Thank you so much. It really puts me in the mood of listening, and it even calmed me down.
Yeah.
Actually, to really being present, not thinking, what is it that I have to say next? What is it that I may have to say in 20 minutes, and so on. It's really the here and now. Thank you very much. How would you? I see this as a ritual. How could someone, you know, working in an office or in front of a computer, let's say, knowing that he or she needs to go to a meeting, how could they create a ritual. It's time now to listen.
I think that two questions that I work with a lot is to ask groups that I work with is, when do you take the most decisions in your work or in meetings? And what state do you have when you take these decisions? For me, this podcast prayer is to work on my state, to become the best version of myself, or to invite that version of myself. And just to take a few breaths and to maybe have take a minute to land in that meeting, to be the best self, to make the best decisions, and to listen. Because I think most of us have been in meetings where a few people take most air and speak the most. And some people seldom give voice to their thoughts. And how can we have a structure to make sure that we get the best out of everyone? And if we have a structure and work without interrupting, that everyone gets to the point, then the first thing is that many people think, oh, I don't have time to do that. But when practicing that, it's actually saving a lot of time, and the decisions are so much sharper and on the point. So it takes time, but it saves time.
I fully agree, because we can, if we really listen or listen better, we can avoid misunderstandings so much. I've seen this so often when I was working in a corporate world that I remember once we were working together with the IT department on a project because we wanted to buy new software. Well, it worked out fine for a long time until the moment when we had to take a decision: which providers are we going to use or choose? All of a sudden, the colleagues from the IT department, they were not available. It was very difficult to catch them. So we had deadlines. So we took a decision from our side, and then they were not happy with that. It escalated up. I even received a call. Oh, if you take this decision, nobody is going to forgive you, more or less. And later the IT director, he told me, oh, this was a misunderstanding. And I thought, if we would have listened to each other weeks earlier, we would have saved so much time and so much nerves. And, some people, they could not even sleep well, I could notice, because of this conflict that turned up. So I think that we would work much more efficiently.
Yeah, if you can add all perspectives, or a lot more perspectives.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question for the audience. And if you think about yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, how good of a listener do you think you are in a work context? 1 would be bad, really bad, and 10 is like excellent. You're a really, really good listener. So I'm going to check the answers. Okay. If you don't want to write it in the comments because you don't want your name to be associated with that, write it on a sheet of paper. And I also invite you to make the reflection I ask you this to rate yourself, but thinking more in a work context. Is it different though in your private life, with your friends, with your family? Just have a little small reflection about that. So thank you for making this note. And so Annika, I would like to continue. You wrote this book, The Art of Listening. And in the book, you present a model that has three sides or three aspects.
Yes.
Could you present this? Could you introduce this to these three sides?
Yes, I can do that. Some of you might have been disturbed by the hanger on the wall, and it can be hard listening when something is disturbing. And you talked about phones and TV, and it can be just an item that's out of the blue. Or today you have like your watch, like beeping or just flashing when talking to someone. And that's really, really interrupting the conversation and the trust between people. But when I start talking about listening, I searched for a model that would summarize it in a way, and I didn't find what I was looking for. And as I'm from the fashion industry, it was like, yes, it's a hanger. I turn it so it's be like the hanger behind me. And these sides are about listening to others and being listened to. So I have to have relationships where I have a balance. Sometimes I'm here and sometimes I'm here. It's not good if it's turning this way, unless you're a psychologist and listening, a therapist and listening to people all the days. But at work, we have to both listen and be listened to. And over time, we have to have sort of a balance. This part of the hanger, it's about listening to yourself. That gives strength. That gives support to the hanger and to the organization, to you as an individual. I don't know if you have done the same mistake as I have done, like having a tiny hanger without this strengthening part, and you put your heavy winter coat on that hanger and it's like, boom, it just breaks. And then you stand there with just the hook in your hand and the coat and the rest of the hanger on the floor. So it's the same with us. Some people, some organizations are not listening inside. And we know we have to do that work as well, to be sure that who am I? Where am I going? And why am I doing what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to work on the different sides of the hanger.
Mm-hmm. And in today's world where there's a lot going on, when sometimes we run from one meeting to the other, it can be difficult. Let's say someone is not a bad listener, but it can be difficult to listen to oneself because there's so much noise.
Yes.
What would be your advice that you would like to give to someone who notice now, oh my God, my hanger is always like this?
Yeah. It's a process. And I often talk about that scale from not listening at all to listening really, really good. And it's not like we can be at really, really good all the time. It's it will consume you if you will be there all the time. So being a better listener, you have to expand your range toward being a really good listener. And then you're going back and forth all the time. But give yourself time to reflect. A lot of people like to write things down as a form of reflection. And it's good to have a structure and ask yourself questions about what's going on and what do I need to do. And calm yourself. Many people try meditation, maybe for the first time, to calm themselves and find it easier to listen to themselves. Some people listen to themselves when they're out running.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah. And one thing is to listen to your body. I have lived most my life up in my head, figuring things out and not allowing my body to tell me things or emotions to disturb these brilliant thoughts. But it's actually the other way around. So I have been working to get down into my body. And it's been a journey, but it's given me so much. And I'm surprised that my body most often knows things before my brain understands things.
I fully agree with that.
So be curious. What does your body tell you? And it can be like when I worked as an analyst many years back, it was all statistics and really structured. And my manager, he asked me, but what does your stomach says? And I was, well, the figures. He said, yeah, but the stomach. And you don't have to explain, but just tell me what your stomach is saying.
Yes.
And so be curious about that. And if you have like a decision, will I do that or that? Yeah, ask your head. But ask your stomach and your heart as well. And see if they are in a way like, okay, this is actually a sign of, I don't think that's a good idea. Or if you lean forward, you're feeling like sparks in your eyes, and that's a good sign. And be curious about these signs. It might be tingling in your fingers, or I don't know what is for you, but maybe when something is stuck in your throat, that can also be a sign.
I sometimes do this exercise for myself or with clients that if I need to choose between two things, then I will ask myself sometimes what could be a third option, let's say. I like to do that. And from there, I like to write each of them on a piece of paper, and I move my body and I stand on that option number one. And usually my body knows, it's like, if it's a no for me, I feel like I cannot move.
Yeah.
If it's a yes, I feel like it's expanding and I could run. If it's not really, I feel it too. There's like no energy. So and when I do this with client, I even see it.
Yeah.
You see it from the body posture and so on. So yes, I think it can tell us a lot. Very good, very, very good idea to listen better to oneself.
Yeah, and maybe often when I'm out speaking on the subject, I ask the audience to sit as if they're not listening at all, being on that part of the scale, and they turn around and a lot of phones, And then I move along the scale, and maybe I stop in the middle, but most often I go to the other side where you listen really, really good, and ask the audience to sit as if they were so good at listening. And without, you can try that at home, you who are listening. How would you sit if you listened really, really good? And without explaining that further, I see a big shift in the audience and leaning forward, a lot of eye contact, nodding. And that's so good. You know it. Your body knows how to listen. And if you feel that you are, you're not there in a speech or at a meeting at work, use your body to sit as if you are really, really interested. And your body will help you becoming more interested and listen more.
Yes. I fully agree. The body knows before. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. We explored a very interesting item here. And another item that I heard you talk about, and I can relate to that, and I guess everybody is listening also can relate to that, is that when we have a conflict, let's say with someone, and we know, okay, it's time to talk about this, we tend to become rather inflexible. Like, I want to stand my position. Maybe even we do it with our body, and I always know, like, the trick is to kind of make a big effort in trying to take the perspective of the other person. But at times it feels like this is almost impossible, or it's very difficult. What would be the tricks that you would give someone who realizes this? Okay, I will try to take the perspective of the other one, but how could I do that?
Yeah. May I tell a story?
Yes.
My son, when he was, I guess he was like 7 or 8, and he came from school one day, and he was very, very upset. They had an argument, and he thought that the other kids were like totally wrong, and he was so upset. And as I'm working with these different perspectives and conflicts and things like that, I thought that, okay, I will do this. I will be the perfect mother telling my son. Yeah, well, I had that in mind. So I often use a lot of props when talking, as I think that's quite good for understanding and absorbing a new thought. So I was talking about, I grabbed my props and I put it on the floor between us. And I asked, what figure do you see? And he said that I see a 9. And I told him, no, you're wrong. It's 6. And he totally got that. But I also talked about that I can't speak louder and more intense to persuade him that it's actually a 6. I have to invite him to stand beside me to see the world as I see the world. But I can't expect that from him without doing it myself. So I have to stand behind the other person to see the world as he sees the world. And I have to be the one starting. Then then we can walk together to my side and see the world as I see the world. And he got this, and okay, yeah, maybe they were not totally wrong, and yeah. And then he said, but Mom, what about the guy lying on the floor. Okay. I didn't see that one coming. I don't know the guy, and I don't know what he's doing on the floor. And then my son said, yeah, but he will lying on the floor and he will see the figure from the side. So it will actually be number one. And I thought that, okay, I thought I was a brilliant mom telling about the 6 and the 9. And then this kid coming to tell me that it's always yet another perspective. It can be number one as well.
Amazing. I almost got a brain shake when you said the number one, because I also had only seen the 6 and the 9. So it's really amazing. And maybe it's also to remind us that, yeah, there can be 2 positions, but maybe even a third one in a conversation or in a conflict.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a 7-year-old to bring that perspective. So we have to listen not only to the one we go to first, or the ones speaking up the first, but where do we find that third or fourth or fifth perspective that will be giving that twist that we really, really need?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing this story. And before we started, I got a question in an email from someone who knew we would be talking today. And the question was, how can I, as a leader or manager, discern or differentiate between what I should listen to and what I maybe should not listen to in that, like fast-paced and information laden world, all these emails and everything. Is there something there that one can make one's life easier?
Yeah, I wish that I could hand out a handout about do this, don't do this. Actually, it's quite complex. You should not listen to people not having a good intention.
Yeah.
And someone that's limiting others. But most often that is not a problem. The problem is that we don't listen enough.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to stop listening. Maybe someone is radical and have opinions that I don't want to follow. And I can say that. I see where you're heading. I want join you on that road. As sometimes as a good listener, people mix that with that you agree. It's not the same thing. You can listen without agreeing. You can listen and trying to understand. But sometimes you have to draw that line and say that, no, I'm not following you in that direction. Stop.
Yes. Put really concrete or clear boundaries to what you want to listen to or not listen to. I had this, sometimes in the day-to-day life at work, there's politics, and then there are rumors about this or about that. And when I was leading my team, I once was very clear, and I said, I do not want that one of you come into my office and say, you know what, I've heard that. I said, don't take my time with this noise. But if you hear something And if you kind of do some research, you call here, you call there to see, is it really true, or it's a rumor, but it's 75% true, that then you can come and talk to me and say, I've heard this. And then I called, I don't know, the HR department or the IT people, and it's true, or it's about to be announced. Or I said, this I'm ready to listen to. But the rest, I want to manage my time efficiently. So this was my trick.
Yeah. And often you can connect that to values in a company.
Yes, you're right.
It's easier to set the boundaries then.
Yes.
A good example.
Annika, time is flying, and I remember when I read your book, you had there was a hanger, and there was like a fourth part to this,
Yeah, the hook.
Yeah, the hook. Where do you hang the hanger? In which cupboard and which room? And if we move now into the context of working internationally, with that I especially mean, when people do communicate in a common language that may not be the native language of many, like you and I, we are doing today. And I came across, and I don't want to stereotype here, but sometimes it's a little bit true. There are like speech patterns in the sense that, let's say the person A is talking. When the person is finished, person B starts. And when person B is finished, person A moves on. In what I had read, and I think in what I like to observe, it's kind of North European, German kind of thing, rather with some order. This one I had looked at was person A is talking, person A is not even finished, that person B already starts talking. Person B is not even finished, person A continues. That, it was said more like Anglo-Saxon. Then we have this one here, and I am French Canadian. I kind of recognize this. I think it's maybe more Latin-like. Person A talks, not finished, person B starts, and then person C in the middle of it also starts talking. So there are maybe different conversation all over the place. I know this rather well. And then there's this one here. Person A talks, there's this silence. There's no interruption. There's just silence before person B talks. And after person B talks, there's silence, and then person A continues. And in what I had read, this was more like in Sweden, maybe we could observe this, and also in Japan. And actually, when I was living in Sweden, I had not observed this or realized or been aware or conscious. But when you and I meet with other friends on Zoom, I really realize, oh, someone talked, and then there's this silence. And as a French Canadian, I'm like, oh, nobody's talking. And I can say that I do feel uncomfortable sometimes, but I respect this. I know it's like this now. But I think that in international meetings, it can lead to a lot of, like rather the people who don't talk much and the people who take a lot of airtime, let's say. What could be a good way to balance this, both for those who speak a lot and for those who have the chance or don't dare to jump in?
Yeah. Think about the correlation between the one talking the most and the best ideas. Is the smartest person in the room always talking the most? So do you think so? Yeah, well, continue that way. But if you think that there are some smart people taking more time and maybe need an invitation to speak up. Sometimes when I work with groups, it's not that easy. So everyone in Sweden is like that, but we have a lot of talkers in Sweden as well, and yeah, it's not that stereotype. But sometimes working with groups, someone talking a lot gets to be mentor for someone who's more quiet and calm and quiet, and they can mentor each other. And it's been really, really fruitful for both of them to do that. So that's one suggestion to overcome the problem of someone talking all the time and someone being silent all the time. But also to take turns.
And maybe allocate some time. Everybody has, I don't know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And then the person who only speaks 3 minutes, people need to wait for the next one to speak, just to see how it's going.
I facilitated a mastermind group last week, and we had this, I hold the room. It was the podcast prayer and much allowance in the room, but also really time management and a tough structure. And that combination, it was so fine seeing that some people, each and everyone had 6 minutes uninterrupted to speak about the subject. And at first someone was like, oh, 6 minutes, I will speak about it for 6 minutes. And maybe that person spoke for 2 minutes and then was quiet. And the other ones weren't allowed to interrupt or say anything. So they sat in silence, a bit uncomfortable. But after another minute, that person lit up and had new thoughts and shared them. And it was like totally a shift. For something happened and the greatest idea came alive. So working with that, exploring that, and allowing to be comfortable, to be curious and exploring. A lot of things can happen.
Yeah, I guess this person all of a sudden felt like, oh, I have all this time. I'm being given this time.
Yes.
Well, otherwise, maybe people would speak over or people would speak more. So, all of a sudden, I'm given this.
Yes. And in just a short amount of time, the most amazing ideas were flowing in the room.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's a good idea to have this structure in meetings.
Yeah.
And the thing with the mentoring you talked about. I like that too. Would there be something, when we also think about listening internationally, whether we do it online or in person, is there something else that you think we should be more careful about when we listen internationally?
Yeah. To ask clarifying questions. I hear this. Is this what you mean? And to be careful, to be aware of your colored glasses that you bring into a conversation. Sometimes I feel it's easier when coming to you Tokyo to do focus groups or Seoul to do in-home interviews, I'm so aware of being Swede with my Swedish glasses, then I might miss this in my conversation with those in the same team. So sometimes I have to remind myself of having the curiosity to look and to take my glasses off in my team close to me, and to be as curious when coming to another, but allow yourself to ask silly questions, any questions, and try not to judge. Oh, you do like that? That's crazy. Okay. But if you instead, okay, you're doing like that, please tell me more about that. I haven't done that before. So
Yeah.
I was, many years ago, when working at H&M, I was in the US and in China to do in-home interviews as the H&M Home were launching. And I went to their homes with a camera, and I filmed and asked questions about how they make the bed, how they set the table. Yeah, I was in the bathroom. I was, everywhere, filming and asking questions. And from the beginning, we were talking about doing focus groups to ask those questions. But then we said that, okay, but I fool myself listening to people in a focus group, because if I met one woman in New York, she explained she was a minimalistic, and when I heard that with my Swedish glasses and mind, I thought it's very light and no stuff at all. But being in her home, I watch her refrigerator that has at least 200 magnets on it. And that's not what I expected. If I had heard her in another room, then the picture I made was totally different. So being in her home, that I can see that's a totally crash about what she's saying, what I interpret, how I interpret that, and the reality. So be curious, ask more questions, ask to see a picture.
Yes, to really understand what the person means.
Yes.
I know that also sometimes with small words that sound similar but that are not. Like in English, if you say to control, and in German, kontrollieren, you know, in German, kontrollieren, it can mean to monitor. But if you translate it with to control, I mean, people are like, but then they don't know where it comes from, because maybe a German person meaning well, thinking that it's from to kontrollieren, to control is the same thing. It can lead to many misunderstandings. So I think this also, what is it? Can you explain what you really mean with that? I think we need more of this in international settings.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we just assume this is the way that I see it, and then it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Be curious, no judgment.
I had a training with a colleague, and he wrote assume on the whiteboard, and then he split it. So assume, it was making an ass out of you and me. So, yes, maybe we do that sometimes.
Very nice. I agree with that. Annika, if we've looked into, how to become better listeners, especially maybe in a position of a leader or manager, and also in international settings. But if we want to wrap up our conversation, and if you would give your 3 tips, 1, 2, 3, as a summary, to become better listeners, what would you say?
I would say that listen with hope, where H is for honesty, O for openness, P for presence, and E for empathy. Then you have taken a huge step toward being a great listener. And take the time, take a breath, and observe yourself. Don't interrupt, don't judge, and be curious about what the other person is saying and what you interpret that into.
Excellent summary. I love this. I think even the first one, listen with hope, it summarizes a lot. It says the big block of what really listening is about, and what I think the world needs, and organizations needs as well, and people, all of us need.
Yeah, and that listening is actually a skill that we can develop and that we should give status that it doesn't have today.
Yes, because we're kind of pushed to be extroverts. I don't like so much to use these words, but and to be outside instead of being
Sending.
inside. Yes, sending instead of listening.
Yeah.
For the audience now listening, Annika made a summary of her 1, 2, 3 tips to become better listeners. If you've listened to the conversation and also to these 3 tips, what would you like, as of right now, start to do more of to become a better listener? Would that be 1, 2, or 3? If you want to share in the chat, we're happy to read your answers. We'll have a look here what I see. Let me check. So actually, I don't see any answers, but write it on your sheet of paper. Make sure that you know what it is that you want to do or want to apply every day, so that you can become a better listener, and it will bring more understanding, increased trust in your relationship, and I'm sure much more efficient decisions, more productivity also at work, for sure. Thank you so much, Annika. How can people reach out to you? How can they contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram. And if you connect and say hi, I will send a recording of sort of a temperature meter. You can measure your temperature with an easy exercise that I will send the link to you.
Thank you again, Annika. Thank you for all of you listening, whether right now live or whether later as a replay on any platform, LinkedIn, YouTube or Instagram. If you have further questions, if you need help in your role as an impact-driven leader, you can also connect with me. And I just want to wish you a wonderful day. I hope you got some inspiration, and I want to wish you all the very, very best in becoming a better listener. Thank you, Annika. Thank you, everybody. Ciao.
Ciao.